And I see that personal is when somebody takes all the judgment that's in the back and like throws it into maybe a single word, like, oh, they're just that liberal, or they're the conservative, or they're racist. So in a way, once we've projected that label, right, in this case, onto the individual, we actually cannot see them anymore.
So Andy, in this chapter, it seems to relate back to some other things. We talked about how, beliefs and all that, and how they can impact relationships and all these other biases and things. Why did you feel it necessary to make personal affront its own chapter, its own thing?
Yeah, there's a moment when I'm mentoring or working with somebody, and then there's like, just went personal, just went personal. And I see that personal is when somebody takes all the judgment that's in the back and like throws it into maybe a single word, like, oh, they're just that liberal, or they're the conservative, or they're racist. So in a way, once we've projected that label, right, in this case, onto the individual, we actually cannot see them anymore. So I'm all like, all bets are like, I'll stop everything in that mentoring moment, say, hold on. So I'll say, what are you seeing? What are you observing? So I'll force them out of this projection of negativity, which is full of judgment, to what are the things that you see that you're having trouble with? Because if I see what I'm having trouble with, I can still engage them in a dialogue around those observable things. But if I say, you're a racist, now what do they have to? They have to defend themselves or attack you, and that's just not productive.
It's interesting you say that. I've noticed for myself that putting somebody a label puts them into a box, and that gives me certainty. And then once they're in that box, it requires change to get out of it, which is its own trigger. So it's more comfortable to keep them in there, which makes it hard for me to re-look at them different. And I worked some time in China with a lot of Chinese people, and I had to be very aware that I was putting them in a box of, oh, that's just Chinese. And then I couldn't see them as individuals as easily. And in China, there's there's like 69 different cultures. There's a lot of diversity, and I was limiting my ability to connect with these different, distinct people because I would just put their actions into a China box.
Yeah.
And becoming aware that I was doing that totally changed my ability to succeed there. But what I found really interesting was just how hard it is to change once you put that label on.
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions how to avoid that? How to avoid even moving this, or be aware of it somehow so that you don't get so strongly sucked into your definition being true and right?
Yeah, I mean, that's again, we go back to a lot of chapters, the self-awareness in chapter 1, being conscious of that process. But let's assume for a moment that doesn't exist. Then I would usually want to put an anchor in. And the anchor would be when you feel your skin get red and you feel the front of your head sort of have like almost a tension of confusion but anger, then you're probably in the right ballpark of whatever I say at this moment is going to probably be more personal.
Got it.
I mean, so it's putting more or less an anchor that says, okay, whenever I feel this, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to give myself a moment to see what's really going on.
Okay. So I guess in previous chapters you talked about that, and mindfulness, of course, helps you get into contact.
Yeah.
How do you, for a person who's new and they're looking for the place they need, because we automatically put people in boxes. It's a natural habit.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is be aware when you're doing this and it's not useful to connection. How do we start looking for where we're doing this in that way? Like what tricks or tips can you give?
First, I would say you need to have an outcome or desire. So we categorize, and we need to categorize. It's part of the brain's function, and we couldn't, function otherwise. So we just need to work things out. There's a restaurant. That's a category of places to get food. So for me, then the question is then if I am now with you, and I have really different views than you do on certain subjects, and yet I want to connect with you, then I have an option, because I can say, oh, you're just a liberal. That would be the way of interaction, right? Or I'd say, you know what, there's certain views that you have around gender identity that I don't have comfort with. So my question to you is, like, how would you see gender in your definition? And so now, instead of it becoming a point of separation, it actually can bring us closer. Strangely, although we have different views, we might even become very close afterwards, which is a world we used to know quite well, when people said, wow, we can have different views and still get along. And that's a world that's sort of harder to find nowadays. People are taking more stances.
So what you're suggesting is, even if I put you in a box, I can still explore that box with the possibility that something changes. And like, I put you in a conservative box, and I put me in a liberal box or whatever. Yeah. By exploring your box through an impersonal way to understand, then even if I'm putting you in a box, I leave a non-threatening way to move you into a different box. Find out, oh my gosh, we think the same thing on this thing, we just have different approaches, for example.
Maybe one little nuance would be, I consciously put you into the box instead of unconsciously put you into the box. Because if I call you the liberal and I don't reflect on what are the things that I associate with that and how can I interact with you around that, that gives us space to engage one another. If it's just you being that and I haven't given any thought to the conscious part of it, then it really leaves us very, we don't have a lot of opportunities for a deeper dialogue.
Right. Okay. Now let me ask you one more question about the exercise. How should a person approach this exercise so that they can get the most out of it?
I mean, the exercise would be not all that dissimilar from what I just did. So it would be, if I use a label, I transfer the label into the things that I observe. And by transferring the things that I observe, it allows me to engage another person. So I don't just say, usually it would be labels that have judgment applied to them. It wouldn't be any label, but a label that I have applied judgment to. Then I'd say, well, the judgment is, for instance, that I feel that abortion rights are important, or I feel they're not important. So I could easily say, oh, you're just a liberal, like I said, or I could engage you on the subject and say, this is how I feel, how is it for you? And so the difference is that if I feel a judgment in the label, then I can take responsibility, going back to another chapter, by making it clear on what I really am attaching, what meaning I attach to that word, and then letting that become a point of reflection. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.